SSQ stands for story, situation, question, or questions. It's a method of literary analysis first developed by author and writing teacher Vivian Gornick, but it's also an extremely helpful technique in learning to ask the types of questions that make great research questions. During the next few weeks, we're going to apply the SSQ method to some different tasks. We're going to listen to just the first verse of Ice-T's 6 in the Morning. This is from 1986, and it is kind of a hip-hop classic in a lot of ways, but it also definitely tells, even in this first stanza, a story. So here we go.
6 in the morning, police at my door, fresh Adidas squeak across the bathroom floor, out my back window, I make my escape, didn't even get a chance to grab my old school tape, mad with no music, happy cause free, and the streets to a player is the place to be, got a knot in my pocket weighing at least $1,000, gold on my neck, my pistol's close at hand, I'm a self-made monster of the city streets, remotely controlled by hard hip-hop beats, but just living in the city is a serious task, didn't know what the cops wanted, didn't have time to ask.
Okay, so again, if you didn't catch it all, that's 6 in the morning, police at my door, fresh Adidas squeak across the bathroom floor, out my back window I make my escape, didn't even get a chance to grab my old school tape, mad with no music but happy cause free, and the streets to a player is the place to be, got a knot in my pocket weighing at least $1,000, gold on my neck, my pistol's close at hand, I'm a self-made monster of the city streets, remotely controlled by hard hip-hop beats, but just living in the city is a serious task, didn't know what the cops wanted, didn't have time to ask. So if we were to do an SSQ analysis of this first verse, what I would say is that the story is police bust into a young man's house as he's sleeping, but he escapes through a back window and hits the streets where he feels at home. If I were to think about the situation that this story brings up, I might think about no-knock warrants because, why are the police coming in such a way so early in the morning, right? Or I might think of kind of a larger situation as well with police and community relations in South Central Los Angeles. You might want to think about that during that specific time period, right? Like the 80s, the early 90s, there was a lot going on in South Central Los Angeles. I'm thinking about the Rodney King situation and the uprising that happened as a result of that. So you could really kind of you could ask an historical question, and that's something that you guys can totally do in your own papers as well, and kind of look at it from that relation, from that aspect. But you could also think about it in the current day, right? And just thinking about right now, what are police community relations in South Central Los Angeles, or in any given community, but you would want to pick a community. So some questions that this might bring up. Here's one that's related. How has policing in communities of color like South Central LA changed since Ice-T wrote this song in the mid-'80s? So you're kind of looking, that's a longitudinal question, right? You're looking at it over time. And of course, it wouldn't have to be South Central Los Angeles. You could pick another kind of community. How successful have no-knock warrants been in communities like South Central LA? And what have been some side effects of that policing practice over the years? Here, I'm thinking really of Breonna Taylor, because listening to this piece and thinking through some of these questions made me think about her and no-knock warrants in that situation as well. So these, again, these are just some questions that might come up. You might be asking questions actually about the history of hip hop, right? You might think about the influence of some of these early artists on contemporary hip hop musicians. That could work absolutely as a research paper, and it could actually work very well for our class with the theme of legacies as well, because that in some ways is a legacy. So finally, we're going to listen to a piece called Thoughts in Transit. This is a spoken word piece by a John Jay student. I don't know if she's still a John Jay student because this was a couple of years ago. Her name is Rose Azario. This, unfortunately, you're going to have to just listen to because I don't have a transcript of, and then we'll do an SSQ analysis of it as well. It's about 2 minutes long. So here it is.
A man sitting next to me smells like grass and cigarettes. He's a small man, but his hands are so big and worn out, like the machinery that they treat him as. rusty, but working to the point of malfunction, just like the relationship between me and my father, which is exactly what the man on the 2 train looks like. A little Mexican man with dark hair and baggy eyes, torn jeans and dirty work boots, just like my father, with a black Jan Sportbook bag that smells like the company that exploits him, like grass and cigarettes, or like the fish market where my father knows is the death of him. He made a vow to his children that he cannot live for himself because he is too old to dream, too Mexican to be citizen, and far too stubborn to give me and 2 other siblings anything but love. Just like the man on the 2 train, who probably has children to feed, where he works less than minimum wage jobs to make limited food on the table, just like my father, far too old for the physical work he's given, but too motivated to stop, hoping that his children will learn the vocabulary he doesn't know, the language he rarely spoke. Just like the man on the 2 train, with the gray mustache and the foreign name, who was falling asleep next to me on the 2 train. And he nods off and drifts away to the place where his parents once lived and where he once called home. Next stop is 72nd Street, only to wake up and realize that he'll never be young, and even if he were, he would not be back in Puebla. He'd work his way only to end up in the same place he's in today, just like my father, and I wonder how he doesn't go insane, because I can't travel without the iPod my father bled for, because I wouldn't dare leave myself with my own thoughts, just like the man with the baggy eyes, ripped jeans, and dirty work boots, just like the man on the 2 train. I cry because I look into his blank eyes and I don't know what he's thinking. Just like my father, who looks like the cracks on my palms, so close and always loving, but to the world he's so small and crooked across my skin, and so unnoticed, just like the man on the 2 train.
Okay, so if we were to analyze Rose's piece using the SSQ method, we might say that the story is Rose rides the 2 train next to a man who reminds her of her father. She contemplates all the sacrifices he made for her and her family. The situation could be immigration, it could be exploitative labor conditions, it could be first generation problems, like not that Rose necessarily has problems, but she definitely has first generation concerns given everything that her father has gone through and is going through. So some questions might be, what unique pressures do the children of recent immigrants to the United States face? How do people's work experiences change after they immigrate to the United States? Questions like that I think would work very well as research questions. All right, thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a better idea of what the SSQ method is and how it brings us to the types of research questions that I want you guys to ask in this class.